Welcome to Access FSU, the podcast for the Office of Accessibility Services at Florida State University. Your hosts are Accessibility Specialist Shannon Bernick and Accessible Technology Coordinator Kimbu York. We are here to shine a solutions-oriented spotlight on issues and concerns for university students of all levels, including undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate, and non-degree seeking. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to Access FSU. This is our fourth episode, and this week we are going to explore another presentation that Shannon has done in the past for some of our students that got a lot of good reviews and some good reception, and we think is very timely. And the title of it is Finding the Me in Social Media, which Shannon came up with that. I really love what you did with that, Shannon. But it is talking about social media as a tool. And I think given the ubiquitousness of social media and social networking sites, we tend to think of it almost as an extension of ourselves and forget that it is actual software, a website, a tool that we're using to interact with the world around us. So, we're going to be addressing some of those issues today. And especially in regards to college students, students with disability, Shannon's going to get into all of that. My role, as usual, is to put the occasional humorous offsides and some of my own experience from the technological and the IT side of, I was there on AOL from the start in the 90s. I was on Usenet, one of the first users of Yahoo groups. So, been through it all, seen it all happen. And, as they say in the great television show Battlestar Galactica, it will all happen again. And so that's where we are today in 2021. So the first questions, I'm just going to go ahead and launch right into it. There's not a lot of intro to be had on this more than I've already said. So rather than scrambling around, I'm just going to leap right into it. Shannon, you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing I think we should clarify for students is uh, talking about the world as it is for them right now. What are the social media types that are out there? What are students using? What is the research showing us on what is popular now? And I know that's a hard target because things are always changing. But what's it say?
Yeah. So first of all, it's good to talk about what is considered social media. And we know that it includes websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. And you'll see a lot of different categories in terms of social media, but generally there are four types that are recognized. One of the most popular, of course, is social networking. So these are sites like LinkedIn, which are fantastic in a college or professional setting, and also things like Facebook that people also use on in a more personal way. There are microblogging sites like Twitter and Tumblr, photo sharing like Instagram and Snapchat, even Pinterest, and then, of course, video sharing like YouTube or Facebook Live. And many of these are very popular among college students. So in 2018, a survey was conducted of which ones were most popular, and Snapchat by far was the most popular among college students. And that was followed by other things like YouTube and Facebook. And then, of course, there were less popular applications at that time, like Discord and TikTok, which we know, of course, have been on the rise, especially TikTok, quite popular today.
Yeah, it is funny looking at that graph, and 2018 in internet terms might as well be, a glacial epoch ago.
Right.
I'm sure Snapchat is still holding tight in there, but definitely Twitter and Discord and TikTok have snuck up. As Shannon knows, I am on Twitter. I'm actually on most of these platforms to varying degrees, just in order to keep up with things like usability issues, accessibility issues, as well as friends and family. So that's what
And,
Facebook's for.
Kibu, you and I are like the perfect balance of social media because you're on all of them and I'm not on any of them. Like if we combine the two of us, we have like the perfect balance
Exactly.
of social
Together we make a really healthy social media user.
media.
But
Exactly.
I was looking over the slides earlier and I was like, "Oh no, this is yeah, some good lessons and we'll get into those in a little bit." Of
Right.
course, the focus of Access FSU is students with disabilities, not just at FSU, but anywhere where there's students with disabilities in higher education at any level. What are some of the issues and benefits for students um, with social media related to students with disabilities?
Yeah. So I think when we think about students with disabilities in terms of social media, we think a lot about those mental health issues. And not just a mental health diagnosis, but also some of the mental health and social interaction pieces that come into play with other disabilities that might make it difficult for students to interact in person. Um, However, we know that social connection is one of humans' greatest needs. In fact, some researchers even put it right up there with food and shelter, right? We are very social creatures. We depend on one another for survival. And of course, this has led to a lot of research. And a study that came out of the University of Pennsylvania, which we all know is close to my heart because that's my home state and also where my husband went to college. They actually had a study conducted of 143 undergraduate students where they were randomly assigned to either limit their Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat use to about 10 minutes per platform per day, or to continue using it regularly. And the results found that that limited use group actually showed significant reductions in their loneliness and depression over 3 weeks compared to the control group. So, this is huge, right? If you have a mental health diagnosis or if you experience mental health concerns as a result of another diagnosis. But of course, both groups showed decreases in anxiety and that fear of missing out over the baseline, suggesting that there is a benefit to self monitoring your use. And so, of course, later in our discussion today, we're going to talk about exactly how to limit social media so that it actually contributes to your well being as opposed to inhibiting your well being.
Yeah, and I know since I am privileged to have a sneak peek of the presentation, I know we're going to get into that whole FOMO issue in more detail, and that's going to be an important one. And I definitely have some experience with that one. In the meantime, especially given this past year plus, where we've been living in a pandemic, lockdown has been an issue for those of us in America, for those of us all over the world. What are the benefits of using social media for students in particular?
Yeah, and so obviously the benefits are very far reaching. And we can start right at the college environment, where we all operate. And that's those enhanced learning management systems. So we have chat functions, videos, forums to share information, and of course, other lesson resources, which are very helpful for students because they strengthen the student participation and they make collaboration and team projects so easy to do. Of course, it aids with research work, with distance learning opportunities using Skype or Zoom, which we've all become experts on. There's information sharing. We can share our views, opinions, tips, projects, study materials, any kind of resources that we have. It makes it so easy to work together in a group, sharing all of those resources again. And of course, we have those web engagements where you can meet with your professors or classmates. And it just goes on extending out from the college environment from there. We get news updates and global exposure. And then on a more personal level, it makes it easy to find friends who have similar interests to us. We can build supportive online communities that create that feeling of belonging and pride in any organization, which is so important, especially for students with disabilities. I remember when we had Beth Thompson on from the Center for Health and Wellness. She shared with us the Disability After Dark group, or yes, Disabilities After Dark, which was, just a really unique group that you might not be able to find in your local community. But of course, social media helps widen your community and find people with those similar interests. And of course, it helps to raise awareness, which we know nowadays with all of the social justice campaigns and the equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. It is just essential in raising awareness for those concerns. And of course, it can help with marketing if you have a job on the side where you're trying to raise money, or even if you're just trying to market yourself in a professional world, which, of course, internship and employment searches um, are so much greater and just can cover a much wider audience using social media.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits, I know, and particularly in over the pandemic and reaching out to other people. We've just wanted to comment on this a little bit because I want to make a note of the awareness that we here in higher education and especially disability services are aware that the increased accessibility that was unexpectedly brought about by the pandemic has been very important for students with disabilities and staff with disabilities, to be perfectly honest. It's been an important change, and we certainly want to see keep that moving forward, and have that accessibility available across all platforms. But it does kind of bring us into the dark side of the web in a way. There are disadvantages to using social media. So Shannon, what do some of the studies and some of the things say about that as a issue that students need to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the yin and the yang, right? And everything and everything good, there's a little bit bad, and everything bad, there's a little bit good. And social media is certainly no exception to that. And unfortunately, a lot of the disadvantages are related to mental health, right? So,
Which is a
one of
big
them being
population for us, definitely.
absolutely, it's huge for us, and I think not only for us at the college level, but as you said, during the pandemic, it brought to light mental health issues. Were worsened for people who were already struggling, and some people who hadn't struggled previously. Now, with that lack of social interaction, began struggling with them. So, unfortunately, social media can can hurt in the case of mental health. One thing that's particularly difficult for students who have ADHD diagnoses is the distraction and the poor self regulation, right? Social media is entertaining. And unfortunately, it can distract students from their studies and educational goals, especially if the symptoms of their diagnosis already contribute to attention being difficult. Another one that's mental health just across the board is cyberbullying, right? We know,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that
That's a
some
tough
people
one.
will say, yeah, it's a tough one. Some people will write very hurtful messages, and of course, this isn't just said one to one. If this is put out there on social media, it reaches a really wide audience, right? So the bullying, in some ways, can almost be worse because of the wide audience that has access to it. Of course, posting private or inappropriate content. Unfortunately, images that are shared in the context of an intimate relationship can, in vengeful ways, be used as, pornographic images on social media, which can have devastating effects on an individual's mental health. And sometimes social media just kind of gives people a license to be hurtful because it kind of creates this little bit of a wall, and we're not saying it straight to someone's face, right? So we don't use the same filter that we would if we were in person. Um, and of course, there's also some more subtle things. It kind of lacks that emotional content or can diminish understanding. We don't hear someone's tone of voice. We don't see the expression on someone's face. So we don't know if they're serious. We don't know if they're making a joke. And unfortunately, a lot can be lost without facial expression, without tone of voice. And sometimes we are being genuine in our expression, but it's somewhat inauthentic because it's not in person. So there's actually been research done on laughter. And how many times do we all use the laughing so hard I'm crying emotion or rolling on the floor laughing emotion, right? But research shows that responding with just an emoji doesn't have the same benefits as physically laughing out loud. So there is a little bit of an inauthentic expression there. And then, of course, it does decrease those face to face communication skills, reading someone's body language, knowing if you've been talking too long and they've lost interest, right? We lose that in the technology world. And unfortunately, that's to our disadvantage because face to face communication is still very important in the real world.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, and ironically, it was a poll on Twitter that a friend of mine posted, and the question was pretty seemingly simple. It's like, online, are you more direct or are you nicer? Which one are you more online? And it started a really good conversation. Is one of the times where I do like uh, being on Twitter and having conversations on Twitter rather than just posting pictures of my dog. And it made me realize that over the years, as I've used these platforms, I've shifted to being really super nice on these platforms because if I am being direct or if I am being, short tempered, it comes across so much worse. Even if I use a laughing emoji after saying something, really sharp, the intention is lost. So I personally have tried to make those changes by just being a lot nicer. And does it make me less interesting as a person? Probably. I don't know. I'm not here to be an influencer or an internet star, but I've seen how people react to some of those situations where an emoji is not clarifying what the person is trying to say or how they're trying to say it. Awkwardness, lack of understanding, those face-to-face cues that we get when we're, all sitting at a table and talking about something. Those definitely, that's very real. And personally, I've become a lot more aware of it the more I've used the platform. So I'm really, really glad that you brought that up as an issue because it's truly something important. S-
Absolutely. And there's just a couple more disadvantages that I think are so important for us to talk about at the college level. Um, a lot of students, they're still young, and many of them have been in the same town, the same high school, for K through 12. And college sometimes can be that first time where we're being exposed to people from other communities, other states, other countries, even. And unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of social media is that sometimes our self image can be very skewed because people often selectively post or filter the images that they post on social media, and we can be guilty of doing it ourselves. So we put this perception out there that we are that nice person, right, and that we do have this super happy life. And other people oftentimes do the same thing, right? They want to show themselves in the best light, so they filter their photos. They only show the good things that are happening, the vacations, the graduations, and we kind of lose sight of not everyone's life is perfect every moment of the day, right? All of us experience heartache. All of us are sad from time to time. All of us are angry. All of us are disappointed. But we don't tend to post those things. And a lot of times when people do, someone might just respond with a little frown emoji. And yeah, that's kind of nice, but that's not as someone saying like, hey, what's going on, do you need someone to talk to, right? So we get these very distorted views of other people's lives, and also we can present a very distorted view of our life, which can then lead to a reduction in closeness with our friends and families because we're not really present for those intimate conversations. And then of course finally, if you're spending all your time sitting and chatting and texting and everything else on your phone, you're likely not spending a whole lot of time with physical activity, right? And again, this is so important, not
I'm
only for
I'm
mental
feeling
health.
really called out right now. I just want
Oh,
you to know. Oh, no.
but but it's true, right? Um and we know that physical activity is so important for mental health. It can help reduce depression, anxiety. Walking meditation is fantastic for that. But then also for people who have physical diagnoses, oftentimes just the right amount of physical activity that they've discussed with their doctor can also help alleviate some of the symptoms of their physical diagnosis. So this is a very important one to consider: is are am I losing time with physical activity because I'm being so sedentary, spending time on social media? It's a great question to ask.
Well, and I think that leads into the next issue that we're talking about. We've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad, and even the ugly. But how can a student use social media? How can they recognize the warning signs of it starting to become an unhealthy habit? And and then we're going to lead into, I guess, how to deal with that. But I think the first thing that's the most important is knowing that it's a problem.
Absolutely. And like I just said, asking yourself a question. Am I spending so much time sitting sedentary on social media that I'm not getting physical activity? A broader question that you can ask yourself is, what's driving my social media use? And this can be tough, to be honest. If you get angry, if you avoid answering that question, probably your body letting you know that, like, hey, maybe I don't have the healthiest practices. um but at the same time, it's not entirely your fault, right? Because these social media platforms are designed to grab your attention. They want to keep you online, and they want to have you repeatedly checking your screen for updates. There is a reason um, that Mark Zuckerberg is one of the wealthiest men in the world, right? Facebook makes a lot of money through advertisements. So social media is designed to grab your attention and to keep you coming back. And of
I'm gonna
course,
I'm gonna jump in there for a second because I think coming from the technology, and I think a lot of people don't really think about that too much. They have these platforms, they use them for free, and they don't think any further than that. But one of the important things in the IT industry that was, and I forget who said this, I'm quoting somebody, but it's become just a rule of thumb, is that if you're not paying for the service, then you are the product. And one of the reasons that Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, Instagram, all these services want to keep you on their platform is not out of the goodness of their heart. They are making money out of your usage. They're collecting your data and they're saving your data and they're selling your data. If this is news to you, I suggest you go do some research on it online, but it's always been the case. And at this point, there's a lot of issues around privacy. We're not going to delve into that here, but I do want you to be aware that while you're using these platforms and they can be fun, they are definitely designed to hook you and keep you there, because that is how they make money, even though you're not paying for it. The more you participate in it, the more data you create for them, and the more they can sell that data for a lot of money. So there is a bigger picture here when we talk about, oh, Twitter's trying to keep you hooked. It's not just because Twitter enjoys having millions of people use their service. It's because that's how they make their money. So please keep this in mind when you're thinking about these issues. And why am I on this platform? Am I not getting off this platform ever all day? These types of awarenesses plug into these greater issues. And again, we might have a different podcast about that where I can talk a lot, but I did want to break in and let students know about that, because if you are using the service for free, you are not the client, you are the product that is being sold.
yeah, I love that quote. And I'm so glad you brought it up right there, because oftentimes with mental health diagnoses, we have a tendency to blame ourselves, right? Oh, well, I'm an anxious person or I'm a depressed person. But that's not quite the full picture, right? That's just one piece of the puzzle. And a quite larger piece is that It's a business. Social media is a business. People are making money from it. And so they are using tactics to keep you coming back to it. And of course, that plays into just human nature. We're the FOMO, right? We're all
We're back
afraid
to
of missing
FOMO.
out, right? It all comes back to FOMO. But we're all, that's just a part of that social connection that we crave as human beings. Um, it plays off of that very fear of not being part of the group, right? And then of course a lot of us, and this is really important, is that some of us use social media either as a security blanket, um, or as an avoidance. So we often turn to social media if we're having any of those uncomfortable feelings, feeling anxious, feeling awkward, lonely, depressed, bored. Um, and sometimes those are really tough feelings to deal with, right? And they may overwhelm our coping mechanisms. We might not know how to do it. So we turn to social media in order to alleviate some of those. However, when we do that, it can lead to this unhealthy cycle of social media use. So we're feeling depressed, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling stressed out. So we use social media to try to relieve that. But then, of course, we see all these selective postings and all this filtering that makes other people's lives seem fantastic. And it actually makes us feel worse and can contribute to those feelings of dissatisfaction and isolation in our life. And then, of course, those make us feel worse. They lead to us using social media even more to try to alleviate those. So it almost becomes a cycle of like addiction, right? We have, someone uses a drug and to alleviate those bad feelings, and then of course they crave that feeling again because those bad feelings come back if you don't deal with them, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. And we see a very similar cycle with unhealthy social media use. So it's really important to acknowledge it if social media has become an unhealthy habit for you.
And I'm gonna talk about myself a little bit here because that I did recognize that this was a couple of years ago, and um, there's a reason why the Facebook app is not on my phone. As engaged as I am in social media, I realized that it was becoming very much a situation where I was in that cycle, where I was, upset about things that were going on in the world, that were going on around me. I'd get on Facebook to talk to my friends and my family, and of course everybody's talking about how terrible things are and what's happening, and they're upset about this, and this person's having this problem, and it was definitely a cycle that was not getting better. My solution, of course, was to just take that particular app off my phone. I still have a Facebook account, but I don't go there as regularly as I used to. Where it used to be, multiple times a day. Now it's like a couple of times a week. So it is possible to do that, but at that point, when you see that cycle, sometimes the best way to handle it is just to break it off. So what are some other ways that students can handle this type of unhealthy? Uh, a, I don't know. Well, I'm not hesitant to use addiction, but unhealthy leaning on or reliance on social media when it's become a problem.
Yeah, and I did want to just point out there, it is a good, um you stopped yourself from using the word addiction. And while there are many campaigns out there to add a variety of items as addictive, we know that right now in the DSM-5, substances such as drugs and alcohol and gambling are the only two that can officially be diagnosed as addictions, right? Even though some behaviors do mimic a very similar cycle, we know that they're not officially diagnosed currently as addictions. But you also noted one of the biggest things to help make sure that you're using social media in a healthy way is to limit your use. And it goes back to that study that we talked about where students who only used each platform for 10 minutes a day, reported the greatest benefits from it. And you used a really good tactic yourself. You took the app off your phone, right? So that now, if you want to use Facebook, you have to log in on your tablet or on your computer. And that can very naturally help a student cut back on their use. Of course, you can turn off your phone during certain times of the day, especially those times when you're interacting with other people, when you sit down to the dinner table, when you're at the gym working out, those times when you actually have the opportunity for face to face interactions. It's a good idea to just go ahead and turn off your phone. Of course, you don't want to bring it to bed with you. There's so much research out there, even just about the blue light, let
Mm.
alone using all the social media apps. And again, that could be a whole podcast in itself, right? But definitely try not to bring it to bed with you.
I'm going to jump in there because there's nowadays, especially on iPhones and newer versions of smartphones, there are settings where you can actually put your phone to sleep with you, and that's one thing I've done. I have a Pixel Google Fi phone, and it has a setting that's a bedtime setting, and while it doesn't like shut down the phone completely, it basically turns everything gray, turns the light down low, makes it very difficult for me to actually like I can't play any games, I can't, watch
Right.
movies. And so it's just like, "Oh, it's bedtime now. Okay." And,
Yeah.
I put the phone aside and I get ready to go to bed. So there are even technological things that can help you with this kind of practice. And some of them, of course, I think you might mention later, or we've mentioned. I'm confused as where we are at this point, but there are apps that can actually cut off your access on your phone and on your computer for limited periods of time. One is called Freedom app, and you can set schedule certain times of the day where you just can't access specific sites if you feel like they're becoming an issue. So there's ways to do this that aren't simply like getting up and walking away, which might actually be the most difficult things of all. So look around for those types of solutions if this is something you think that you need to do.
And Kimbo, I think you'll be so proud of me because the presentation that we're going to post in the notes along with this podcast has a little link to a bunch of apps that
Oh,
will help you limit your social media use. And I was like, oh, Kimbo's going to be so proud of me.
I am. I am. You went online, you did the research, you got the links. That's awesome.
So I have never used any of them, and I can't speak to whether they're helpful or not, but a lot of people do experience success with them. So,
Perfect.
so in addition to limiting your social media use, it's also good if you can try to change your focus. And this doesn't have to be a lifestyle change, but just going back to being in touch with yourself. And are you using social media as a substitute for real life? So, are you feeling anxiety or depression that you're just not sure how to cope with? Are you lonely? Are you feeling bored because you're not doing anything or not making the most of your time? And if we start to address those particular feelings, learn coping mechanisms for them. For example, if you're feeling lonely, reach out to an old friend to see if they want to have lunch. If you're feeling bored, pick up a new book to read or join a club for something that you've been interested in trying. All of these things help you to kind of change your focus and address those underlying feelings that you might have been avoiding dealing with. And of course, those are much healthier ways of responding to those feelings and coping with them as opposed to always turning to social media. Of course, you want to try to spend as much time with people in person as you can offline. As we talked about, joining a club, asking a friend to lunch. If you and your friend are both busy, maybe you guys can run errands together or just go to the gym together, kind of fit in some of those chores that you need to take care of. And then finally, another great way is to express gratitude. And this, again, is something we could probably do an entire podcast on because there's been so much research in recent years on it. But really, just taking time for reflection, not only about those feelings that are difficult to deal with that may come with a mental health diagnosis, but also taking some time to think about the good things in life. and keeping a journal where you track all of those positive experiences. And this doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be something as big as graduating from college, right? This could just be something like, I really enjoyed the warm feeling on my skin from the bright sunshine this morning, or I saw a beautiful flower bloom with the morning dew on it. And these can just be small things. Maybe it doesn't have to be something big. It just has to be something that is meaningful to you, something that puts a smile on your face, something that gives you that warm fuzzy feeling. And of course, practicing mindfulness is a great way to get in touch with that. And then also volunteering, either with people or with animals, is a great way to feel that connection to the world around us, and can help alleviate some of those more difficult feelings that might contribute to an unhealthy social media use.
Those are all very good suggestions. For me, uh, Shannon and I are both dog owners, so we relate at this level here. But yeah, getting out and just walking my dog, spending some time with her, waking her up because she's an old dog. But she doesn't always like that part. But it's just interacting with your actual environment. Even if it doesn't currently hold other people in it, certainly people with disabilities and students with disabilities may find themselves in circumstances where they simply can't go out and be with a lot of people or go to the party or doing something like that. It doesn't mean that there isn't an environment around you that you can engage with, whether it's pets, whether it's neighbors, whether it's close family. Even if in a situation, if you're dealing with a lockdown or you're in quarantine, have somebody come sit on the porch. We have seen some videos of that, of where people just, sat on the porch and talked through a screen, or, talked through the glass and held up signs. There's lots of different ways to engage with your people, with your environment, in a way that sort of takes you out of the digital world. And, as much as I love the digital world, we've hit on some of the things here in this discussion that really can make it problematic. And I'm a fandom girl. I'm involved in a lot of Chinese drama fandom stuff right now. A lot of things going on in that fandom. I'm gone for 5 hours, and new stuff is posted all over the place. It's easy for me to think, oh no, I missed the important things. But you know what? I have a job. I have friends. I have my dog. I have my house. I just did the vacuuming, and I may not like that, but it is in a way to engage with my environment. It's okay. I can catch up with the videos later. So, these are the situations where we need to think about these things more than just Shannon. I think you nailed it. It's like I want to escape reality sometimes, and sometimes that can be healthy coping mechanism, and sometimes it might not be so much.
Right.
So, I appreciate you doing all the research and putting this all together for our discussion, and the links. That's going to be
Yes,
great. Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
yes.
Uh, and from a technology perspective, I think we hit some of the main points. About what to be wary of, tools that you might be able to use. You have anything else to add to this before we wrap up?
I think we pretty much covered everything, but I am a huge fan of animals. I am definitely an animal lover, and I think they are really one of the best ways to combat some of those feelings that are difficult to deal with, that anxiety, that depression, that loneliness, that boredom. And I know Keely is a little older now. Crosby will be 5 next
Ooh.
month, but because he's a border collie, he has not lost an ounce of energy. Um,
Mm-mm.
so he is just such a great way, to keep me going, make sure that I get my exercise, make sure that I play every day, which is something that we don't always do as adults.
And that's
Um,
so true. It's so important.
yeah, and I just wanted to remind some of our students that, emotional support animals have increased in popularity in more recent years. And, Florida in the last 2 years just had some changes in their laws that govern emotional support animals in college living. So if that is something that is helpful for you, just, definitely reach out to our office and talk about that, because it's such a healthy alternative um, to to social media and to some other things that that can be detrimental to mental health.
Yeah, definitely. That's very true. And, there's still restrictions about it. And Shannon would be able to, is a good person to contact for that. But we've seen it all, bunnies, rats.
Snake,
I don't get, yeah, snakes. Some I don't quite get, but I respect other people's choices, right? But
yes.
dogs and cats
Mhm.
and hamsters, a quick short story. One of the actors that I kind of follow, he adopted a sugar glider. They don't have very long lives, but it's
No,
so
but I love them.
small. Yes, but it was
Mhm.
so small he could take it on set with him, and
Wow.
he could hide it in his clothes, and it would help him with his anxiety because his pet was always there with him. Now, I don't recommend that doing it in class, for instance, but that
Well,
would
we
not
would
be
not allow
appropriate,
that
right?
on campus, but
Right, exactly.
right?
But there, it's just a statement of how important that kind of connection can be, and all the different
Absolutely.
ways we can make that connection. So,
Yeah.
uh, really appreciate it. I think we've hit all the major points. Now, I know that going forward, we were planning previously to have a interview with our boss and the director of the OAS, Dr. Jennifer Mitchell. There were some technology difficulties, which is why this is actually the next episode unexpectedly. But we will be coming back with a new interview with her, hopefully with all of our technical difficulties resolved. Given that it's my job to resolve technical difficulties, I feel kind of bad about it. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there, I promise. And I know, of course, this might, people might be listening to this at any time, but are we in the middle of summer now? Wait, we're in June something.
We're in June and we're
Oh,
starting summer session C at the end of this month.
oh,
Yeah, so fall's right around the corner. But
oh.
and of course we are doing first year Fridays, which are primarily targeted at the incoming freshmen and their families. But it's a lot of good information for any students who are new to FSU, whether they're transfer students or whether you haven't used the OAS services before. So we really encourage you to visit our website to see some of the topics that we have this upcoming Friday. We're going to be talking about university housing and making the most of living on campus. So we highly encourage anyone who is an incoming freshman, or like I said, just a transfer student or new to the OAS, to join us for those to learn a little bit more about what we offer.
And those are ongoing. So definitely, she said, check our website for that. But also on that same page, which is our news and announcement page, we have links to previous presentations. We had one recently on our AIM student portal login for students who are registered with us. Very informative. If you're thinking about getting registered with us, or you are and are still figuring out how to use AIM, really recommend going and clicking on that link. It's not updated just yet. I'm putting it on the website today, but
Yeah, that was a
it'll be
great
there.
presentation. You
uh,
and Ian did amazing.
oh yeah, and especially Anne with the testing. She's just all over that. So those will be able to be reviewed or listened to or seen, in retrospect as well, because we want to try to make this information as widely accessible as possible. I think that's it. I don't have anything more to add. Shannon, you got anything?
I'm good.
All
I
right.
got another meeting to get to.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up now, and it's and our log off, which is OAS is OUT out.
Yeah, I love
Woo!
it.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Access FSU. Did you find it interesting, helpful, insightful? Please let us know by emailing our office at oas@fsu.edu. We are always looking for feedback on issues and suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app, including iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. For more information about the Office of Accessibility Services at Florida State University, visit our website at https://dss.fsu.edu/OAS. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today.